Hello friends, this is Rupesh and watching CVNet video series on C++ and today's topic is make a class non-inheritable without using a final keyword in C++. So you can make a class non-inheritable using final keyword. Before this final keyword was there in Java, but later it came in C++ also. So the use of final keyword is if you will create a class and declare it final, then you cannot inherit that class. Okay? So that class becomes non-inheritable. But this video topic is how to create a class non-inheritable without using final keyword. So for that we need a class. So this is the requirement for that. We need one class which will make our class as final class. So we'll be having one class and we will inherit some class which will make our class non-inheritable. And let's call that class a final class. So we'll create a final class which will make our class final. And we'll see the example. So the solution to this problem is make a default constructor for final class as private. So we will have final class and its default constructor will be private. So this is the first point and you should follow these 3 points in order to achieve that. If you will miss any one of these points, your class is not final class. Or to say your class is not non-inheritable, it is inheritable. So you have to follow these 3 points. So the first point is make a default constructor of final class as private. Second point is inherit final class as virtual. This is really very important. You have to inherit final class as virtual in our class which we want to make a non-inheritable class. And the third point is make our class as friend inside final class. And why will make our class as friend inside final class? Because only our class can call the constructor of final class, not the derived class constructor. That's why it will become non-inheritable. So these 3 points should be taken care if you want to make your class non-inheritable. So this was the trick before people were using if they wanted to achieve this final keyword behavior. But now no one uses this trick. Everyone uses this final keyword, but still they ask in the interview sometimes that, do you know this or not? So let's see how it is working. I'll create a class for you so quickly. So this is the setup for all these points here. So as I said, we'll be needing one final class. So this is the final class and this is what our class which we want to make final. Okay. So we don't want this base to be derived inside this derived class. So we want to restrict this particular behavior. We don't want this to happen. So for that we need a final class and this is our actual class which we want to make non-inheritable. So let's see these points again and discuss why it is important. So the first point is make a default constructor of final class as private. So as you can see, this is a default constructor and I have kept it under this private access specifier. And why it is needed? It is needed because when there is a derived class and you will create derived class object, it will try to call this final and it won't be able to call that because it is in private section and derived will not call this final keyword, final class constructor using base class because it is virtually inherited. This is another chain which will help us to achieve this. We have to inherit using virtual, otherwise derived will call base and then base will call final and there won't be any issue. Are you getting my point? The thing is, you have this final, you inherited that into base and this base is inherited into derived. Now if I will create an object of derived like this, then it will call derived constructor first. So it will come here first and if it is not virtually inherited here, then this derived will call base class constructor and then that base class constructor will call final. And as we have kept this base class as friend inside final, it can call final even if it is in private area. So there won't be any issue. But if we are using this virtual inheritance and doing the same thing, then this is going to work like this. This derived will call base and this derived will call final. Not like this and from here to here. No. So this is the behavior when we are having virtual inheritance and this is non-virtual inheritance. So let's repeat this again. If derived is non-virtual, then in that case, derived constructor will call base constructor and then base constructor will end up calling this final class constructor. So this is final. But if it is virtual, it will call in this order. Derived will call base and then derived will only call final. And here you can see that if derived will try to call final, it won't be able to do that because final is in private, so that you can avoid base being inherited into derived. Okay, so this virtual inheritance and making this final constructor private is very important. Now we have discussed 2 points: making a default constructor of final class as private and inherit final class as virtual. In our class, we want to make non-inheritable. So we have inherited into base class using virtual and we have created final class constructor private. Now the third point is make our class as friend inside final class. So why this is important? This is third point. Okay, this is first point and this is second point. This third point is important because let's suppose you want to only create base class object like this, base and b. So it should be allowed, right? And if you are not using this friend class base here, base will try to call this class constructor which is in private, so it won't be allowed. But as this class is saying that base is my friend, so it is allowed. So this is a trick, right? And we have to follow 1, 2 and 3 points. So I think I'm clear. Let's run this program and see the outputs. So for that I need to create one object of derived d. So if I'll compile this, it should give the error. See, it is giving some error here. It is telling that virtual base class final has private default constructor. So this is a problem. I can't do this. Okay. And as I said, if I'll remove this virtual, it will work. So let's do that. Just remove this, save this, compile it again and see it has compiled successfully. So that virtual is really very important. Don't miss that. So let's get it back and save it. And let's check another thing. If you will not make this as friend, then what will happen? But for that we need base class object. So let's create that base b and just remove this as well as this because this will not compile if we have this. Okay, so let's save this and compile this again. See, it has compiled. So we can create base b if we have this kind of class structure. And it is obvious that you should be allowed to create base class object and use it with no problem. And yeah, we wanted to see this friend class thing, right? So if I will remove this and compile, it will give you the error. Obviously, because this virtual base class final has private default constructor will give the error. So actually this is making a call to the final constructor. That's why error is shown here. Actually, error is not this point, error is at this point, but this is not logical error and this is actually the correct way to give this error. So our 2 points are covered. Third point is making this constructor as private. So if let me just remove this comment, and if you will not make this as final, then whole game is over. You cannot achieve that. You just think about it, you will get the answer. If you will not create this final as private, final constructor as private, then derived would be able to call this and this particular code will start working. So let's do that and check if I am saying this correct. Let's compile this. There should not be any error. Okay, we have not uncommented this. So let's uncomment this and compile it again. See, it has compiled and there is no problem in this code. Even though we have completed 2 points out of 3, but still it is not working. So all these 3 points should be fulfilled in order to achieve this behavior. Okay. So this should be private and compile again and we got the error. Okay. So I think I'm done here. Thanks for watching and make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you can get the notification for upcoming videos like this. And don't forget to hit the like button, dude. I will get a big help if you will do that. And I'll see you in the next videos. Bye-bye.